Welcome to Ideas and Insights, a show devoted to exploring novel perspectives and contemporary issues. I am Badrinath Rao, your host. Not too long ago, going to college was an exciting prospect for students and their parents. A good college education was a passport to a secure, decent life. Not anymore. Higher education in America is passing through turbulent times. Everything about going to college is now fraught with challenges. Getting admission to a good school, a good program, paying for college, and thriving in school are all mind-bogglingly complex problems. It is not easy for college faculty either. The advent of AI and other digital technologies has forced professors to reconsider the foundational premises of their occupation. Besides, stagnating incomes, diminishing support for research, and disaffected students in classrooms have all eroded the sheen of a quiet life of the mind in academia. University administrators are also a frazzled lot. Several private, tuition-driven universities face the daunting prospect of imminent closure due to declining student enrollment and decreasing revenues. Administrators have to constantly scrounge for resources to keep their colleges open. To compound issues, advances in AI, machine learning, and other digital technologies have cast ominous shadows on the future of work and the value proposition of a college degree. How do we resolve these multiple crises assailing universities? Are we at an inflection point in higher education? Do we have to redesign education to make it more meaningful, affordable, and valuable? I shall explore these issues with our guest, Dr. Robert McMahan, president of Kettering University in Flint, Michigan, and a professor of physics. During his long and illustrious career as a faculty and a college administrator, he has amassed a wealth of experience and a nuanced understanding of the unique dilemmas of his profession. Welcome to Ideas and Insights, Dr. McMahan. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's begin with an issue that faces colleges big and small,
Right.
and that has to do with declining enrollments. And this problem has afflicted colleges all over the country. Many have closed down, some are struggling to survive. As the president of mainly tuition-driven institution, Kettering University, you are well aware of the dire consequences of low enrollments. So tell us why enrollments are declining and what can we do to get students in our classrooms?
Well, I think the answer to that is a great question, and it is a dire situation for many institutions across the country, because there are a number of factors at work here. Some are internal to the institutions themselves, others are external. The biggest external factor, of course, is the demographic shifts that we're currently experiencing as a country. Populations are declining, college-going populations are declining, and as well as there are shifts of population from different regions of the country to other regions. If we think back, one of the interesting things about enrollment in colleges is we know where the students are, right? We can count them. They're in high school and junior high, and we can just count them, literally. So it's not a mystery where they are and in what numbers. And one of the interesting things about the recession in 2008 was the childbearing rate went down, as well as a number of other issues that we faced as a society. And if you add 17 years to 2008, you get 2025, and that's where we are now. And in 2025, there is a large demographic cliff that we're going to see in the college-going population. And it's due to the fact that there just weren't as many children being born then, and now there are not as many children who are going to enter college. And it's something that any industry has to face, not just universities, but a rationalization of the demand to the supply.
So, if I have understood you correctly, we are now at the point where all institutions, big and small, are vying to draw students from the same shrinking pool
Yes.
that have graduated high school.
Yes.
And this is a big challenge, and some institutions are better equipped than others. Now, what can smaller tuition-driven institutions realistically do to get students into the classroom?
Well, I think they have to be realistic for starters, and they have to say, okay, what we're facing is a mismatch of supply and demand, and so ultimately, you're going to see over the next few years a number of institutions engage in increasingly dramatic and increasingly maybe even desperate strategies to try to keep what they had. Whereas probably ultimately what's going to happen in the sector is you're going to see large-scale consolidations, mergers, and many closures in response to the declining numbers of students, because there just simply aren't enough students to fill the number of chairs at institutions that we've built.
Given the demographic challenge that we have in this country, have you thought of getting students from abroad, from India and elsewhere? Now, this is a strategy many universities are pursuing, but do you think accelerating this, where you go after, say, the top 10% of the population in other parts of the world, which have purchasing power equal to or greater than
Yes.
that of middle class and upper middle class Americans, and offer them access to superior American education? Is that a strategy?
Well, you know, I would take exception on that. I agreed with your question up to the very last point, the very last statement, and therein lies the rub, is that yes, this is a strategy that we employ. This is a strategy that many institutions employ. Smaller, less well-funded institutions are less able to reach out that far, especially when we talk about India and China and some of these markets. But the point of exception I would take is one of the things that is competing with this is the markets, those countries themselves, because over the past decades, the quality of educational options available to students in their native countries have increased significantly. So it's no longer a situation, no longer just a fait accompli that if you wanted a great education, you need to go to the United States. There are actually domestic opportunities that rival, in many cases, what they can achieve in the US.
If enrollment is a big issue for colleges, the other major challenge facing colleges of all shapes, sizes in this country, and in fact globally, is the advent of AI,
Yes.
machine learning, and other digital technologies. Now, I'm sure you know that there is an AI-powered software like Google's Notebook LM, which can summarize lectures that professors deliver in classes, and it can also pull in things from YouTube and come up with an auto summary of everything, and also produce a synthetic podcast of this entire
Yes.
topic. Now, all of this means that young people do not have to endure cognitive discomfort taking notes laboriously, reading large tomes, and so on. And this facility is changing the expectations of our students. We are dealing with a different generation of students. Now, some say that AI and related technologies are good, they are desirable, and they can be leveraged to enhance learning outcomes. And then there are others who are pessimistic and say that this new wave, a new set of technologies will radically change how we teach. What, in your view, Dr. McMahan, is going to be the impact of AI, machine learning, and other digital technologies? And do we have to now examine the foundational premises of pedagogy given these challenges?
Absolutely. I would say as far as your summary, your question actually begs the answer. I mean, I would say as to what the benefits and the negatives associated with AI, I would say all of the above. And the reality is these technologies exist. They are here. They are not going away. They are going to get more impactful. They are going to be more integrated over time. And students and professionals, and as professionals when they graduate ultimately, they will be employing these technologies aggressively over the course of their careers. Mm-hmm. So we can't simply ignore them, and I don't think probably a successful strategy is to say you can't use them any more than it would be to say you can't use a pencil or a computer in your education. They're going to be a part of the fabric of it. And as a result, pedagogy has to shift. Now it's going to make it more challenging in some ways, because I think, as kind of an aside, one of the interesting things about AI is that students don't typically use AI the way we think they do.
That's true.
Right? And in fact, what we think is they use it simply to crib something. They say, write me a five-page paper on this topic, and let it spit it out, and then they make a few modifications. Now, some of them do, of course, do this, but typically how the more thoughtful students are using it is they will say something like, they'll ask an AI chatbot, they'll say, provide me with 5 thesis statements for a paper on this topic with this constraints. And then it'll blup them out. And then it'll say, take thesis statement 3, and what would an outline for a 4-paragraph paper on this essay on that topic look like? How would that be? So in other words, they're actually not using it to compose the prose. They're using it to do what we really want to teach them, which is the integration and synthesis part of learning. And that's where the challenge, I think, mostly to pedagogy, the biggest challenge to pedagogy comes in, is we can't ignore that, because that's what we actually want them to learn. Because ultimately, I had a conversation with an engineering student recently, and he asked me, does it make sense, in his particular case, to get a PE, a professional engineering certification? And I said, absolutely it does. I said, think about in the world of AI, when more and more of the kind of rote tasks are being offloaded to these language models, there's always going to be a place in the chain of authority for a person to say, yes, this I've looked at this and this makes sense and I approve. So, how students approach their careers is going to change as well.
There's a related question, Dr. McMahan, concerning AI and its role in education. You know that there is a great deal of talk about how AI is going to drastically change the nature of work and is likely to, in fact, eviscerate whole professions. Now, some don't subscribe to this view and think that this is all exaggerated, and some others say, no, this is going to happen. Whatever the truth, the perception matters. And it's important for our students because they are spending a huge amount of money to get into college, and they will obviously want to know if in the age of AI, a college degree has any significant value proposition. And what makes them wonder about this is this shift towards short-term online courses, micro-credentials, video-based learning, open educational sources, and all the rest of it. giving young people burdened by student loans the sense that maybe, just maybe, they can access everything they need to know without going to college. So the question then is, does a 4-year college degree still have relevance, or must we revamp our curriculum completely such that we equip students to deal with the challenges that come in the wake of AI?
It does, and there's a lot to unpack in that question. But what I would say is this: the true value of a college degree has never really been the knowledge that, the direct kind of domain knowledge that's imparted during the education. And what I mean by this is, it's long been recognized that, and I'm making this number up, but it's something like, 75% of the factual data that you learn as a student in college is obsolete by the time you graduate. And in fact, there are all sorts of lists that say, the top 10 professions today didn't exist 20 years ago. And that has been true for some time and will continue to be true. So if you're going to school specifically to prepare for one of the professions that are hot today, you are likely not to be preparing specifically for the profession that is going to be hot when you are ready to enter it. And so that begs the larger question: what is the value of a college degree has it ever been about? What it has always been? And that is really not the factual data, but the habits of mind that come from the education that they receive. So it's not the fact that they know specifically how to solve this equation. Mm-hmm. It's how they know to how to deal with complexity in a system, how to decompose a problem into tractable pieces, how to solve the pieces and reassemble them mm-hmm. into a solution. Those habits of mind are what has always been most valuable about a college education, and which continue to be valuable. Again, because the professions that we're preparing for don't exist today, right? So we have to retool ourselves, and all of these pieces are part of that spectrum of opportunities to do so.
Even if one concedes that there is intrinsic merit in accessing education in order to acquire the habits of mind, as you put it, and become a full person, which is what we generally say education is all about. The fact remains that as things stand, institutions of higher education are going through turbulent times.
Absolutely.
Students are in great frame of, sense, they have a sense of worry, and faculty are disaffected, they are kind of demoralized because the support they are getting is declining, they feel undervalued, their salaries are stagnant in many instances. Administrators, and you know this better than me, are always scrounging for monies. They are trying to make everyone happy, all the stakeholders. Higher education, Dr. McMahan, is no longer a happy place to be. Given this, do you think the time has come to completely reimagine this whole enterprise of higher education and redesign it from scratch such that we become relevant to the times in which we live? Now, if that is so, where do we begin and how do we do this?
I think the time is very ripe for this. I mean, Clayton Christensen at Harvard Business School had he wrote very, very extensively on disruption and mm-hmm. of markets, and higher education is facing that phenomenon right now. The higher education business model is being disrupted by all sides. That, I would argue, is not for individual institutions, perhaps, on a case-by-case basis, but for the sector is going to ultimately be a very healthy activity. Because what you're going to see out of this, Right now, we have a mismatch of capacity and demand. And the demographic cliffs that are coming are going to exacerbate that. And if you had, there was a time when large metropolitan areas had 4 or 5 or 6 daily newspapers.
Right.
Now, you could argue that is a lost, that was a lost model, and lament that loss. But now what has been replaced with, ultimately, zooming forward to today, is a plethora of options for media for media, for news,
So something similar is happening in education.
Something similar is happening in education, and it's going to happen. It is. I think it is inevitable, and you're going to see some really creative solutions emerge. You're going to see a lot of institutions ultimately merge. You're going to see some closures. You're going to see some consolidations across the industry, just like you see in any industry that is facing this kind of disruption. Ultimately, I think you're going to see a lot of new and innovative and healthy approaches to how to deliver the product to the consumer, like in any industry.
Let me close this interview by asking one last question, and this concerns the role of the liberal arts in education. As you know well, in all discussions about higher education, whether we like it or not, there is this sense that liberal arts are kind of expendable, or at least they get second-class treatment, if you will, with the focus now on STEM. Now, do you still think that liberal arts matter and students specializing in STEM areas should pursue liberal arts and take these subjects seriously? Now, before you answer,
I've got a great answer for that.
I have a caveat. You shall not say it will make you well-rounded, because students have heard that, and there are better ways of becoming well-rounded. So, realistically and concretely, do you think liberal arts matter, and should students take liberal arts seriously?
I do, and I'll say this. I have 2 undergraduate degrees. I have an undergraduate degree in physics, and I have an undergraduate degree in art history. And if you zoom forward to my PhD thesis in physics, I thank my art history advisor for what she gave me in terms of my background and my ability to achieve that success. They are, and it goes back to my earlier point about habits of mind. The liberal arts are an important component of developing those habits of mind, in seeing connections, in establishing linkages, because innovation and creativity occur at the intersections of disciplines primarily, not within the disciplines themselves.
Right.
They're the places where people say, this looks a lot like that, and it's kind of similar, and I wonder if I brought those 2 ideas together, and what would that produce? I think that's why the liberal arts are and will continue to be important to achieving that goal of the habits of mind and preparing students.
I have one last question for you, and I can give you just 30 seconds for this. Someone watching our interview, a student, is likely to go, the host, Professor Rao, is an academic. The guest, Dr. McMahan, is an administrator and a professor. So these folks have a vested interest in getting students inside the classroom. So tell our students, prospective and current, what they should do with respect to pursuing a college education, and why you think it matters.
I think you need to pursue an education. Okay, I think that's very important beyond high school, and I think you need to think of education not as a thing that you complete, but something that occurs over the course of your life. And then as to what avenue you pursue in obtaining that education, be it a community college, be it certification programs or certificate programs or coding camps or whatever. However you wish to pursue that, I think the important thing is that you do so and that you engage it fully with and make some demands of the programs themselves as to how this prepares you. Education is what economists call a credence good, and that is something whose value you really can't define until after you buy it. It's kind of like an accountant. You don't know how good your accountant is until you get audited by the IRS. Then you find out how good they are. Education is that way. You don't find out how good it is until you have to use it later on. But you can make demands of the institutions as you're looking at your options and surveying your options. You can make demands of the institutions, and you should, and say, what do I come out of here with? What is it that how successful, how fulfilled are the graduates of this institution? Do they go on to pursue the careers that they started out to do? Are they successful in that? How do you and make those demands of the programs? Don't just engage education blindly and say, I'm going to go to school because they have a football team, or I'm going to go to school because they do this. I mean, you can do that. That's free to do that. But I think an opportunity is lost to engage and say, what is it? And when you're there, when you're studying a particular discipline, ask, what are my prospects in this discipline going forward, and how do I optimize those? I don't know, that's a bit of vigorous hand waving, but.
Well, your answer is very interesting. You have provided a capacious account of education and its tangible and intangible benefits. Education has intergenerational benefits as well. And thank you, Dr. McMahan, for coming in and
pleasure.
sharing your insights. It was a great pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We would love to hear from you about this episode. You can email us at ideasandinsights@wgte.org. Remember, you can access Ideas and Insights anytime by visiting our website, wgte.org/ideas and insights. That's it for today. Thanks for joining me on Ideas and Insights. Goodbye.